Alrighty. Everybody's here. We'll kick this off. This is the Planning POCD Subcommittee meeting, April 18th, 2024, 7 o'clock. We're in room 133 of the Brookfield Town Hall. All members of the subcommittee are here. Scott Dale, myself, Courtney Knapp, Mark Rollengart, and August Stepniak. All present. The first thing we have is the review of the minutes of the last meeting. Everybody get a chance to look at it? Yes. Is there anything we should add, edit? Look good. Change, otherwise? Any good? No? Want to make a motion to approve those minutes?
I'll make a motion.
Second?
I'll second.
Second? All approved?
Aye.
Otherwise? Yeah. Okay, good. Now we're on to the Plan and Conservation and Development Update Workshop. So, Courtney, you're up.
Okay. Give me one sec. Okay, so, hi everyone. So a couple of updates, and then maybe a point of discussion for us, and then assuming we have time, if we're interested in doing so, we have the materials to do a stakeholder analysis, which we had built into the calendar a few months back. It's a stakeholder analysis is basically a way for us to identify who are the key stakeholders in the town of Brookfield who are going to want to engage in one way or another, or who will be influenced by or influence this plan, POCD update process, and us to kind of map a little bit where, from a political standpoint, where these different stakeholders chart in terms of their influence and their didn't write down the second part, and their impact. So we can do that, and it's an interactive exercise. But before we get there, a couple of updates. So, and Aga, Mark, please jump in, or Scott as well. So first off, in terms of the evaluating the 2015-2016 strategies, there's the template that we put in the shared drive way back when. I finally started to add a bunch of stuff to it, so I don't know if anyone has seen it recently, but in the last couple of days, which reflects the correspondence that I've had with the various chair people of the different commissions and some directors of, say, like Parks and Rec or Economic Development. Scott and I had a meeting with First Selectman Steve Dunn last week. He gave us a bunch of additional information, context, and so we've been, I would say maybe about a third of the action items have information now about like their status based on mostly on those correspondence and conversations, but I've been doing a little bit of my own digging as well, as I'm sure other folks have. And so I'm just plugging away there, and as more information comes in, we ask people to get back to us by the end of the month, and so I'll probably wait a few more days before I send a friendly reminder. And I think if we don't get perfect information by May 1st, we still can keep moving. Like, this isn't, contingent on us moving with some of the other things, but we, can kind of wrap that up ASAP. But it's been interesting, to hear from folks who, are some of whom have memory of the last update, and some of whom are like newer to their positions, and to, for them to see them kind of wrap their heads around some of the things that they were charged with implementing, and in some cases, like we were told, actually this commission is in charge of this now, and so there's been a little bit of like shuttling back and forth, but we're getting some good info. So that's that. Anything that I missed? I don't know, Aga or Mark, if you want to add anything to like what you've been doing in terms of your work on that end, that would be awesome.
Yeah, so what I've been doing so far is, since one of the categories that I'm focusing on is infrastructure and transportation. Focusing right now on walkability because that's a very broad area that we need to analyze, and how can we make roads safer for pedestrians, how can we make roads safer for cyclists, how can we make roads safer for drivers, how can we also encourage some of the other ancillary benefits of having better walkability. You have quality of life improvements, property value improvements. So I'm looking at that right now, and I'm putting together like a little report on some research I've done, and I'll add it to the Google Drive once it's complete, but
Fabulous.
it's almost there.
Great, thank you so much, that's great.
You're welcome.
Yeah, all of that, like, qualitative stuff in your photos and whatnot, will be excellent, like, material also for the plans and things.
So I just have a couple of
Yeah.
thoughts. I looked at the worksheet last night,
Mm-hmm.
and there is a lot of flags that says and that have in process status,
Mm-hmm.
but then the information is blank.
Yeah. I
And
think-
then I guess my concern is, like, to me, when it says in process, that means someone is working on it,
Mhm.
and who is that person?
I think, can I respond to that just really quickly? I
Yeah.
think that was just, it's like a drop-down tag
Yes.
list, and I think I accidentally made that the default, so that doesn't, most of them, if you see, a lot of them I haven't heard back from yet, so I only have information related to one, so all of that I maybe just need to change to, like, there's another label that's like contacted but waiting for info, and I just, so we don't know what the status for any of that
Okay.
is, actually.
And
Yeah.
then I also had that thought, maybe one way to communicate via email is to BCC other people. It's not gonna be a meeting considered, but at least everybody will know what's going on, because I think,
BCC?
yeah,
Blind
blank
copy?
copy.
I'm not following, what does that do?
So like when, let's say, Courtney is communicating with someone via email, she can BCC myself and others, so like we can
So that you're in
stay
the
in the
loop. Yeah.
know, in the loop, because I think what happens is, like you have one person, Courtney, is working on certain things, but then I have to wait till the next meeting to hear an update.
Mhm.
I'm not sure if I'd agree with
think
that procedure, yeah.
We need to have a more transparent form of communication, either by having a daily log of like updates in the spreadsheet of, like what was done and who's working on what, or maybe be included on some of the written communication. That's what I'm saying.
I think,
What-
just really quickly, I mean, part of that's my fault because I did not upload anything until like 2 days ago. I wasn't able to sit down and like go through everyone's messages, but I agree with you. I don't know that I can like promise that I can do like a daily update. It's just not like how my availability is. But to your point about communication, I agree. And I think part of our concern was with the quorum thing, but I've only, I guess, I will certainly, like for any of the categories that you are signed up for, if I get something from them and respond, I'll CC you, but most
Okay,
people I have
yeah.
not heard back from.
Okay.
Yeah, but I didn't want to add you at that early, like originally, because I was afraid that was gonna do a quorum, but my plan was to like loop you guys in as soon as I heard back from
see.
anyone, but I wasn't clear about that, and we missed you at the last meeting, so. Does that work for you, or, I mean, if you have
Yeah,
other ideas
I
about
watched-
communication?
I watched the
Yeah.
meeting that
Oh, yeah,
I
okay.
was not here on.
But does that seem
Sure.
reasonable?
Yes.
Okay, in terms of transparency.
And then, are we
Yeah.
gonna meet with the other two selectmen? Maybe they have something else to say?
Not at this point, but it's maybe down the
No.
road, yeah.
Then-
I mean, I think down the road, probably other,
Okay.
Ultimately, they're gonna have, whatever we end up doing.
Yeah.
So yeah,
As-
we'll wanna have them as part of the process.
Well, as far
Yeah.
as like input goes.
Mhm.
you
Oh,
know,
yeah,
like-
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was just related to, I mean, I think we only emailed Steve because there was a whole line of action items that were like first selectmen. So
Okay.
I had combined that with the Board of Selectmen, and so he just responded and wanted to set up that meeting. But I think the idea and the goal is to have a very
To-
inclusive
Okay.
process,
And
absolutely.
I think we were
Yeah,
also
yeah.
contacting like, commission chairs and leads as
Yeah.
well, so.
Yeah, and then I was thinking that letter that you sent,
Mhm.
you know, maybe, cause, there is a list of people who worked on the POCD back in 2015. Maybe we should also include, like, send that letter to some of those people to get their thoughts on to what worked and what didn't work, and then, you know,
Do you
kind
have
of
any
their
specific names in
background.
mind?
I'm thinking of people who are part of that big list in the
Yeah, I
front
just
of
was wondering if you
the.
had any specific names.
No,
that
I
you
don't
had
have
in
any
mind.
specific names, but,
Okay.
you know, I don't know any of those
Yeah.
people, but
Okay.
I'm thinking they would be very good people to
Mhm.
bring some, cause we have those goals that are listed
Mhm.
on the spreadsheet, which came from the POCD,
Mhm.
that I think they would be really good resource as to, to a like, to give an update as to like
Mhm.
what happened and how come something was not met.
Was or was not, yeah.
Just my thoughts.
Mhm.
Well, maybe when we meet again as a commission, Linda was part of all that, maybe she knows of some people, right?
Then there's a
Yeah.
list in the plan, yeah, of
Yeah.
individuals.
Yeah, maybe she's a resource for that.
Mhm.
Some of the people have been contacted though, just based off of
Yeah.
the
They
ones
have.
that
Yeah.
you sent out.
Mhm.
Just looking at this off the top of my head, cause I was part of the emails that went out. Some of these people won't necessarily be easy to contact. You have a lot of former, not just commissioners, people who sat in different seats and
Yeah.
they're, once they've moved on to a different town, they might be a little difficult
I
to
don't
get
wanna
a
think
hold of.
about Brookfield anymore.
Yeah, I think part of the thought was like we would try to connect through the chairs, but that if there were, I think we encouraged them in that letter if there were other contacts or other people, you know, who wanted to give us, but I think that to your point, I mean,
I think there are some good ones, like
there are some good ones.
ones that I didn't even think about,
Okay.
like First Light is a great thing that you might wanna consider contacting.
First
Because
Light.
of the late
Oh,
districts, they own
mhm.
up to a certain period of time, that might be something to be.
I mean, when we do the stakeholder analysis tonight, maybe it's worth it to like, we can pull that up and mine that a little bit,
Yeah.
so that we make sure that, you know, because presumably if they were, if they had an interest then, they're gonna have an interest now. So we don't wanna miss anybody, and then just kinda like lay that out for ourselves. But I apologize for the not CCing you on everything. I'm still a little confused and like trepidatious about, I don't wanna trigger some kind of quorum thing, but I'll loop everyone in as soon as I hear back. Like literally, I think besides Steve, Greg, and then Laura from Parks and Rec wrote back. But I'm still waiting on like most everyone. So
Yeah.
moving forward, I'll make sure that
Yeah.
you're on there. Yeah,
Thank you.
definitely, for sure. Yeah. Okay, so that's that piece of it. I mean, so we mentioned the meeting with Selectman Dunn, and so I guess the second update that we met with him, and you know, started to get his perspective on this process, and that conversation involved a discussion, as we've already been talking about, but about the town, you know, allocating a budget for this POCD update, and he, please correct me, you know, if I get anything wrong, Scott, because you were also there, but I got the sense that he feels pretty strongly that we do, you know, hire external consultants to at least assist with certain parts of the process. Like there are definitely some technical and like legal pieces, which we just want to make sure we're crossing all of our, you know, T's and dotting our I's. So part of it's technical, part of it's maybe political as well, and I'm just kind of, giving you my read of where he was coming from. Having, the commission voting on something that they're producing, like, I don't know if that's necessarily conflict of interest, but politically, having an outside that can provide a little bit of a, not a check, a
Like
sense
a
of like
objective
independence. Yeah.
status,
Yeah,
yes.
exactly. Yeah. And so I think that, so I've been thinking a lot about that for the last week since we met with him, and trying to think about how could we maybe strike a balance.
It's like
Yeah,
it's like anything. You,
Yeah.
you can outsource functions, you can't
Sure.
outsource responsibility.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
I'm someone who's audited consultants, the
Yeah.
work of them before, many times actually, so I have maybe a different opinion
Mhm.
of some of them anyway, as a
Yeah.
result of that. But there could be a time and place.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So it sounded like,
Mhm.
they're gonna vote on the budget in May, and if that gets approved, then, July 1st, is that like the beginning of the fiscal year would be when?
Would be.
Yeah, so, so we should talk about that, and, he said that he would follow our lead in terms of scoping, what that consultant needs would be. It could be as simple as like just the technical piece, although in my experience, after I left that meeting, Scott, I was thinking more about it. It's like I haven't seen that many like requests for services where it's just like the legal alignment and not all the other stuff. So, I mean, if we have a budget to think about, can we join forces with, and kind of collaborate, hire consultants, not to take over the process, but to
Correct.
work with us.
Together.
Yeah.
It's our,
And
we provide the direction.
Yes, yeah, so we provide the direction. I was thinking we could even still, so that we retain more ownership over this, like we could potentially still do the existing conditions analysis and like treat it as an appendix, or a supplemental report, so that we're getting together all the good information for them. We're doing the stakeholder analysis, we're helping them think about the process, but we could hire them to, do the to lead the community engagement, say, or to, anyhow, certainly to lead that, like, the stuff that Steve has technical concerns about. So anyway, this is a very half-baked idea, but I wanted to bring it to us all to talk about. But that was like the sense I got, at the meeting last week, and then he sent another message today to us to just remind us that money would hopefully be coming, and he CC'd the purchasing person. So I think he's trying to get, everything lined up so that can happen. And I can see the benefits, to it. I mean, I think we would just need to, in my mind, like, if we spend some time crafting a really strong RFP that clearly delineates, like, this is the structure,
Yes.
we've already kind of like figured that out, this is really what we want. If community engagement's important, like, tell us exactly how you're gonna like do this, and try to get some responses and see, hopefully we'd have a few, applicants, and we could interview them. And I don't know, that's just kind of my thought, because I'm just wondering if we're gonna, just keep running up against this resistance, to doing it all in-house. And I think we could actually maybe strengthen our, overall everything if we think about
So
hiring, yeah.
my thoughts for
Mhm.
this is, if you watch a lot of many town meetings, a lot of the third party people that come to present things for approval, they often quote the POCD, and they will use that document as a source for everything. So I feel that we should cover the town from like a legal perspective, so there is no loopholes and things that could be missed,
That's assuming, that the only way to achieve that goal is through a consultant, but
Right.
yeah,
Well,
yeah.
if we were
Mhm.
to have a consultant,
Yeah.
I also agree, it
Mhm.
should be more from like a legal.
It might add just like a layer. I mean, we could probably get away with doing some of that stuff ourselves. You know what I mean? Like those, but it would add another layer of legitimacy, maybe, that I was feeling like I don't know if it was a concern I was sensing or what, but just this, you know, this perception of bias, even if it doesn't exist, so that we're, you know,
Right.
producing and then also
Exactly.
approving and voting, you know,
Yeah.
and approving something that,
Exactly.
you know, we manage.
So
It makes
I-
the leaders feel comfortable.
Yeah, yeah. So could we like meet halfway,
That's all
you know
it
what I
is.
mean? It's like, we're not talking about just like completely outsourcing it, but like,
Exactly.
let's lay like a really clear, you know, structure and let's work with them to manage it. I don't know, do you have thoughts, Laura, or?
I've
Yeah.
always been a big advocate of having
Yeah.
a consultant. Particularly, and this is going to sound really horrible, and I don't wish anything on anybody.
Yeah.
But when you're in the middle of a project and the main person, for example, has to leave town for a month because they have an emergency in their family, or God forbid something terrible
Right.
happens. At least if you have a professional firm,
That was
behind
something
it,
that
you
Steve
have,
brought up as well.
you have
Yeah.
bench strength.
Mhm.
Unless the consultant has
Yeah,
to leave
he brought
town.
that
Yeah.
to me.
But yeah.
They have
Anyone
bench
of
strength
us-
as a consultant,
Yeah.
that's
Right.
another concern
Like,
though.
what
You
is
gotta
something
vet the
happening?
consultant.
Right.
You know.
Make sure they have the
Yeah.
proper resources.
The one thing I don't, usually, you may look for a consultant for expertise. That's what it is. If you feel you don't have the expertise to go through, to perform the job. That's where we've kind of felt that that's not what we're lacking at this point. But it doesn't hurt to have other opinions on that matter.
It's an outside
Yeah.
viewpoint, it's a different perspective, and you might have your viewpoints on
Mhm.
the POCD. You have your own views of the town. We have some interesting views of the town, because we have Courtney, who's only been in town for a couple of years. I believe, Scott, you've been in town for much longer.
I grew up in Danbury, so I've been nearby my whole life.
So, you know, you have
Mhm.
an interesting perspective
Mhm.
from out of town versus in town. But how about somebody from a different town entirely in Connecticut who's written a different stylistic POCDs too? When you're looking at this one, I know there was initial discussion of not necessarily liking the way, or I shouldn't say not liking, wanting to change some of the structure to it. It gives you an opportunity to look at other people's samples from different areas. I only personally pulled the ones of surrounding towns, but you might have a consultant that's worked up in, you know, Hartford County more, or instead of Fairfield County. It's not always apples to apples.
Right.
when you read the comments online and when you listen to the meetings, I feel that many residents of this town want this town to be a small town with less development, more open space, kind of a family type town where you can raise your family and still have a quality of life. And
Mhm.
I don't think we can forget about
No,
that.
definitely.
And I think
No.
that should be, you know, something that, so the existing POCD is a lot of like that, and yet some stuff needs to be changed, but I think we should continue with that direction.
Well, and you know, you've spoken about the community engagement. I think that's very important. That's one of the most important pieces of this whole process, you know, is getting the opinion of the people in the town.
I feel like in my mind, the kind of expertise that you know, my dream, you know, consultant would be someone who, who like has experience with consensus building, because of just what we're talking about, that there are going to be different views. And so it's like, yeah, it's one thing to just like get everyone's vision out, and then how do you like translate that into something cohesive, right?
Right.
And so there's like the consensus, you know, kind of facilitation work, someone who has like a firm that has really strong and robust and, you know, kind of creative community engagement thinking, and my, like, you know, pie in the sky, if we were to say like, look, we're gonna take care of all of the background research so that you don't eat up your budget with that, then you could focus on implementation, you know what I mean? And it's like, that could be the, you know, a value added, which sure, we could do that ourselves, but I don't know if we could do all of that like in a year with the limited amount of time that we each have to like actually, you know, so like we could get to the vision and the strategies and everything by August, certainly, but they might be able to take it to the next level, because they're getting paid to do it, and then, you know, making it, you know, that it's like, you know, contract work for them. So that was just, you know, that was kind of my way of trying to think about the compromise a little bit, like, again, how do we not give this up in any way, but that we actually use, like, as an opportunity to join forces with hopefully some, like, interesting experts, you know, I don't know.
Well, the affordability plan too might be something you want to consider that might be very helpful to have an expert to weigh in on, particularly that component, since the affordability plan has to be done every 5 years. It makes sense to kind of put it on the same schedule as your POCD.
That's not due for a few more years, right?
It isn't at this time.
Yeah.
But WestCog, which is our council of government suggesting it, the state currently is suggesting it as well. It's always good to be consistent with our state POCD, our council of government. That's another thing that a consultant might be really good for, making sure we are consistent with the other outlining documents of the state in order to make sure we also are eligible for grant money if we go too far astray.
Yeah, and I think that, so that, all of those kind of alignments, and that was part of, Steve's, what Steve was bringing up, and I think, you're right, like, prioritizing, you know, a firm that has the experience in Connecticut, maybe they've worked elsewhere too, but that they can, you know, they have that familiarity. I think I think we could find, you know, I would hope some interesting, you know, examples, and then we get the fun part of, like, choosing the best one, who, like, the group that seems like they would jive with how we want to do this thing, and maybe they have experience, like, co-creating this stuff with planning commissions, and that would be a question that I'd want to ask them, you know, it's like their thoughts or their experiences with co-management, so that it's not just, you know, we're asking you to take this thing off and just come back and report to us 3 times over the next year. I don't know.
Not been my experience working with consultants for the POCD, that
What
they were
do you
very, very
Hands-on.
hands-on,
That's
very
great, yeah.
active with the planning commission. They always met with the chair. They invited whoever was available for meetings during the day. When they held stakeholder meetings, I believe the planning chair came to everything they could. But there's also that limitation of day jobs.
Right.
Everybody has a day job, so if you need to meet with so-and-so at this time, a consultant might be a great opportunity to kind of use them a little bit to outsource.
Right, yeah, to outsource some of that, that exactly.
But in the same time, though, we do want planning to maintain the ownership of the process and
Ultimately,
the direction that we go. And that's
you have to sign
so,
it, you know?
But no, but you can. There's many situations where people just hire the consultant,
absolutely.
get back to me in a year and show me what you've done. You know,
But
and that's
sometimes
obvious.
up to them.
Yeah.
Sometimes they've made that decision of, hey,
Right.
this isn't something
Right.
I really want. So hi,
Right.
consultant, instead of being interactive, I think there's room to be able to do both. Still keep ownership of it, but also utilize expertise of people who literally do this as their jobs every day.
Right. Mark, what do you think?
This is sort of a little bit of a different direction I'm taking, but considering that in 2026 planning and zoning are going to merge into one commission, do you think that there would be, you know, we're talking about hiring a consultant to manage the POCD. Do you think it would be appropriate to include in the POCD a proposal that there would be like a town planner role? Because I'm thinking, like, once planning and zoning have been merged, like, their responsibilities are going to be increased, even though the commission will have more people on it. It might make it, it might make it so that there's less focus on, like, long-term, like, visionary planning for, like, how the town should be shaped. Do you think that it would be appropriate to include something, or maybe have a consultant role that evolves into a permanent like planning role for someone?
That's a different, that's kind of
yeah.
We kind of have one already. Actually, we originally, I believe, when Greg's history letter is probably the best explanation I could give on that. That there's I think it was Kathy Dave, I'm sorry, I'm saying names of people that I don't actually know and came way before me, used to take on the town planner position in economic development. At some time they kind of split off certain responsibilities, now ended up with the land use director, and certain responsibilities ended up with your economic development /
Yeah.
town planner.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So it does exist. I think it's just maybe not as clear on who's who. I actually attend the zoning meetings,
Mhm.
so
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that could be
Yeah.
something we include in like our objective on like the responsibilities of
You'd
those
have-
positions and.
It's a good thought, you have to
Mhm.
define what that is too, and
Yeah.
then
Right.
the other, the way I look at it too is that, you know, we're elected,
Mhm.
right? Right, may not be our day job, but we are elected to be put in these positions to make decisions and set direction in certain areas and so forth. And to an extent, in a lot of ways, the folks that are working for the town are there to support and execute, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, whatever.
100%, and I think that it's
Mhm.
considering that like as you said, all of us, we have day jobs, you know,
Yeah.
we're volunteers. It makes sense that there would be someone in a permanent role to help with the execution of things, to like
Mhm.
attend various, you know, like I mean, I know that we already do have people who do that, and I'm not I'm not even necessarily saying we would need to hire a new person or even propose that we hire a new person. It's just making it clear like what the roles are of the existing people and how that plays into the long-term vision for how planning looks in Brookfield.
Mhm.
Correct. Maybe some of the roles have to be redefined. And,
Yeah.
you know, they have to update the job descriptions and stuff like that.
I would caution you as far as going so far to touching anybody's job description.
Yeah.
Some of them are
Yeah, that's
union
not-
driven in town,
Mm-hmm.
and some
No,
of
we're
them,
talking
you
about the
know,
planner, like the town planner position.
so that's, the responsibilities are split kind of between Greg for the
Mhm.
economic development
Okay.
side and for myself for the zoning
I
and
see.
the planning
Mhm.
side. So
Mhm.
I'd be, you know, in addition to the zoning enforcement officer, you don't see me because I hide right there. Because there's not enough room at the table, but, you know, we do work with the different chairs. I do work with it as far as drafting regulations and
Mhm.
checking the legality. You're only one commission I get to visit.
Right.
I have several.
Yes, yeah. Well,
Just one quick,
Yeah. no, go ahead,
different
please.
question.
Yeah.
Just going back to original discussion of some of the feedback that you've gotten so
Mhm.
far, is there any, I guess, is there anything you can conclude just from the general feedback you've gotten so far? Was it good? Was the 2015, anything that you can take from that? The small sample
At a
of
very high level, I
responses you
mean, I
got?
think we got a lot of information back from Greg, and he's obviously been like really involved in Four Corners, so it seems like, and you can see it, you know, that progress is definitely being made there. I think he said it's about 50% complete with the second 50% funded, so that's great, and that touches on like a number of action items that, you know, cross the plan. So that was encouraging. Let me think about who else I heard back from. I mean, he had some some information about the Economic Development Commission and some of their work. So they're, you know, very active. There were a couple of action items that seem as though they either stalled or kind of fell apart. I thought that was sort of interesting. Like, for instance, the second historic district idea, which was around, I think, around the Four Corners.
Craft
You know,
Center.
yeah, around the craft center. Like, you know, in order to submit an application, the applicant needs the buy-in of all of the property owners, and it sounds like there was like one property owner who kind of wasn't interested, and so in that case, that's why that stalled. The dog park, it also seems like is, you know, maybe, you know, I don't know if I would call it stalled, but it's, you know, it's got a lot going on there. So it was just interesting to get some of that context, you know, and then again, we're missing responses from some of the big wigs who will give us a lot of information, which I'll follow up with, like the Zoning Commission. Conservation Commission has a lot of action items.
So a lot of those are on their agendas for the next
Great.
meeting.
Okay, so we might not hear from-
It's not that they forgot about it.
No,
it's that
I knew
got
they
it.
had
timing,
it, yeah,
yeah.
I just, I
So-
wanted to give them a little bit of time, yeah, before I
Because
started.
I believe it's on, zoning, as I'm sure you all know, has been handling a very big public hearing.
Yes,
As soon as that's done, I bet you'll get a little bit of a more response.
that's cool, yeah, it's like
I'm sorry, if I remember correctly, dog park idea got voted down.
I believe that's correct.
And
It was
the
voted
new
down.
library was voted down. I think it was 2018.
Yeah, I think there were two main
I
reasons.
remember correctly, yes.
Okay, I did.
Somewhere, I can't remember the year, but it was
Yeah, I
definitely
think
on a
it
ballot.
was 2018 that got voted down.
The dog park or the library, I'm sorry.
Both.
Okay,
If I oh, sorry.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly, I think I guess let's start with the dog park. The main reason the dog park was voted down was because they wanted to take some of the land from Happy Landings and
Yeah.
turn it into a dog park, and
Yeah.
people didn't want to take
Right.
away from that specific. It's not that people were against having a dog park; it's that they didn't want it there.
that location, so
Yeah,
it's stalled
exactly.
at the, like,
And-
that piece.
And the same thing happened with the library because they were going to take soccer fields to build the library. So it doesn't necessarily mean people are against a new library. It just means that they didn't want the library on the soccer fields.
But I think, like, adding that information that they were voted down is, like, part of the context that we should include. Yeah, for sure. And, I mean, when we talked to Steve about the library, he didn't mention that it had voted down, but he was talking about Center School and, you know, how they're talking about wanting to create, like, a civic hub there, which would have some library facilities, but other things as well. And that maybe the original library stays a library. That, I guess that's TBD. But so in that sense, it didn't sound like it had totally died, but that it had maybe shifted directions. At least that piece of. So just making notes of, but things I hadn't heard that, but I'll make sure that I add there. Did we answer your question, Scott? I forget. You were.
What was that?
I don't know. You were saying something, and then we sort of. I think we went on like another.
Oh, my question was just an
Yeah.
overall theme from the responses we've gotten so far.
Oh, right. Yeah, I mean, so that's basically it, and so we're still missing a bunch. I'm gonna talk to the folks at the Candlewood Lake Authority probably next week because they wanted to give me some information,
Okay.
about their work. But otherwise, it's just coming in slowly and surely. I mean, yeah. So it seems like some things have moved, other things have shifted gears, and TBD. But a lot of progress in the transportation, active transportation, Four Corners, economic development, housing. Yeah.
And what did Laura from Park and Rec say?
She. I have to look at my email. It was a. I don't think I have my phone on me. There was one action item around active transportation. She said they hadn't gotten involved in that at all. And then for the dog park, she basically referred us just to a town statute. Which regulates, I guess, how pets can be in public space. And then I forget what I honestly forget what the last one was, but I'll send that to you. I think I basically copied verbatim what she said and put it in the little implementation notes. Yeah,
Okay.
but I'll forward
look
it to you.
at the notes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. Okay, so maybe the last thing I would say here is, I mean, I guess we'll figure out together over the next couple of meetings this consultant piece. I mean, it sounds like the consensus is that we're open to it. That we would just want to have control over, like, clearly delineating the scope of work and making sure that we continue to manage it. So the one thing I would say with that is that might shift some of what we do together over the next couple months because we're going to want to build in some time to, like, really build out that RFP and get it so everybody feels confident with it. And so next month, over the next couple of months, part of what we were going to do was hammer out a in-person community engagement strategy. I wonder if we should hold off on just that piece of it because the consultant might end up, like, we can ask them to pitch a community engagement program. But in the meantime, we can keep doing, like, moving forward with developing the survey and getting the website going and kind of, like, get all those balls rolling. I don't know why we couldn't continue to manage those pieces of it.
I'd hate to lose time
yeah.
on that piece, just because I don't want to wait too long, and we could always adjust if need be, but I wouldn't want to delay
the only thing we would be postponing would be planning the in-person
Yeah,
activities. I mean, we could still talk about it, but I think we're gonna need to give something up in order to get the time to create the RFP and like really get clear language, because that's probably gonna be like a fairly, you know, it might be several pages of like pretty extensive language.
I
So,
just,
yeah.
I guess I've always been thinking about some form of community, you know, just brainstorming, you know, kind of thing, yeah.
I think a good first step in that is, you know, Courtney, I like the chart that you created because we can outline the stakeholders and that'll help us determine the direction we want to go in terms of community outreach.
Right.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, I think we would keep moving on like sort of all the pieces that we had laid out for ourselves. And if we have ideas that we want to throw on the table for like, yeah, I really want to make sure that we do like a charrette or, you know, whatever we can, we can like be very clear in the RFP that this is this kind of stuff that we're like looking for. So we can still be brainstorming, but the idea would be maybe that we eventually will be like outsourcing that work, and so somewhat. And so if that's the case, can we get a little bit of time back to like, because the RFP, if we want to like be on the fiscal calendar and
Yeah.
have that work in our, you know, for us to finish next year, then we're gonna need to
That's my one
make a bunch of
concern
moves.
with the
Yeah.
consultant is, does that push this calendar back?
I don't
That's my,
yeah.
my biggest worry, probably.
I don't
really.
see why it would. My feeling, because because like if over the next month we get the language ready to go, then assuming that the budget is passed in May, then like as soon as it's passed, I think we could probably upload the RFP. Then we give it a month or two to get responses, and then I feel like we could still be
30 days.
yeah, something like that. We could be still on track to like kickstart all the face-to-face community engagement in August or September, whatever it was that we said, but like with them, you know.
Or do we lose May, June, July?
But we're still creating the survey. Then we're uploading that. We're doing the website. We're doing all the existing conditions analysis, like all that stuff we were going to be doing throughout. So we wouldn't be actually like, I think.
Because like this is one,
Yeah.
maybe this is probably an earlier version of the
Yeah.
calendar, but on here we had like a community open house in June potentially.
Yeah, that's an old one. Yeah, because we had pushed it to September. So, like the idea was going to be that over the summer we'd do all of that background stuff and get our own community engagement process, you know, squared away, and be ready to and get the online presence and the survey out and everything, so that we can just start the face-to-face in the fall. So I don't see why I personally don't see why we would get derailed our schedule at all. We would just, unless we didn't move swiftly to like hire a consultant, you know, in time to get them on board with the new fiscal year. So I don't know. Do we need to? What do you think? Do we need to like just sit with it for a little bit?
I think we
or-
operate as if they're not here, and then if they are part of the process, then they add to it, and they can help speed it along. You know, I want to make sure that we're not losing time. That we're staying on schedule. That's my concern.
So should we start working on the survey now?
I think the content of it, right? Can we not work on
Oh
it?
yeah,
Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah.
I think we should keep. Let's
Yeah.
not outsource that survey. The survey
Yeah.
is like,
Mhm.
let's just like do that, you know. And
Yeah.
it's like we can give
Yeah.
them the results, and they can then translate that into
Some
like
numbers.
into the numbers and the part of the vision or what, you know, whatever, like some of the values. Yeah, all that stuff we keep moving ahead with. The only thing I'm saying that we maybe take a beat with for right now is to flesh out our own face-to-face community like engagement, because I just think we could have ideas, we could put them in a parking lot, but maybe until we hear from the consultants, because they might be really good at that and just say like, look, this is everything we want to do, and we're like,
Or
awesome.
the other side, we lost 3 months, and they'll say, yeah, that's what I would have done too. That's my concern.
I just don't understand how we would
Yeah.
lose 3 months.
Well,
Yeah.
we're waiting for them until, you know, it's what we're in April now, May, June, July, right? we'll wait until what's?
But we wouldn't have
August,
started, we
September?
wouldn't have started the face-to-face community engagement stuff until the fall anyway, in the most recent version of the calendar. We're like
Yeah.
using the summer to
September.
do all the existing conditions and
Yeah.
all of this stuff and figure out what we wanna do and line that all, that was the idea, was lining that all up. Anyway, so we use the summer to start the survey, we get the survey out, like, there's no reason why we would need to wait on any of that. It would just be like, you know,
Because you run into vacation time and most people won't be back till September.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
why I think
June
initially,
is the graduations.
I thought it would be before summer this year, initially. Just to, again, it's just to get a pulse of what's out there, that brainstorming, throw all these ideas out there. So if we're moving forward, we have an idea of what the town's thinking anyway, you know?
So maybe we should do the survey and then maybe we could do initial survey and then subsequent survey.
like, what would be the difference between the two? Like, yeah, sorry, just like, sorry, yeah.
It says time, yeah.
Well, so the initial survey would be like to kind of gauge what the thinking is, and maybe the second survey would be more specific.
Okay, so maybe, I mean, yeah, maybe we do something that, yeah, townwide survey gauges interest on all these different areas, and we say to
Yeah.
the consultant, as part of this, you might be wanting to do additional surveying, like, we'll give you our results, but they might wanna get down into the nitty gritty, you know, later, but that doesn't preclude us from
Well, what
kicking it all off.
maybe what were you thinking for that what we're saying, the secondary or the one? What's the benefit of waiting until that particular point in time to do the survey?
Maybe
What do you
because,
feel?
like, at that, because we won't have done any of the visioning, before then, and so after then we know what the
I'm
project.
looking at it the
the
other
prior-
way. I'd like to hear the opinions and then use that to help formulate the vision. I was looking at
So
it the
that,
other way around.
it is, but but I think if I'm understanding what you're
Yeah.
saying, the first survey would be, these are your
Brainstorm.
opinions, yeah, but
Brainstorm.
it's like, not getting down to like the brass tacks, it's more like, these are the big
Just
ideas.
like get a sense
And then it might
of-
say, then maybe, for example, we find out through that, God, I'm just like making this.
They want us to build an NFL stadium on Four Corners.
Exactly,
With
okay, yeah.
overwhelming support for
Okay,
it.
yes, so there's like,
Alright.
yes, and so then the consultant might do some
Yeah.
additional like surveying or focus
Mhm.
groups to try to understand that piece. So
Mhm.
we've identified the big ideas, and then given them that information that they can go deeper with, like,
Mhm.
and actually think about, like, if people, the consensus is that they truly want an NFL stadium, like, then how do we get there? Like, they're
Right.
thinking about implementation, they're
Yeah.
not just
Mhm.
thinking about ideas. So, I don't know, that's my thought. Like, and actually by doing that first thing ourselves and kicking it, I mean, I feel like we could carry it ourselves kind of like through the open house, like if we use because we'll do all that background work over the summer. The open house was gonna be the face-to-face thing that would kick it all off and say like, this is
Okay.
the state of the community, you know, and like we were gonna, and here we are,
And this is our vision.
or not the, these,
maybe not our vision, but
this is like how the
big
community,
topic.
this is how the community changes, these are the topics, you know. And then there we could say, and these are the consultants, and they're gonna be, you know, helping, so,
So,
you
based
know-
on what you're saying, I think there is a place to have maybe both, what you're describing, is have that initial survey to get a pulse, get those
Yeah.
brainstorming
Yeah.
ideas, and then what
Then they
you're
just-
describing, which is more,
Yeah.
or a more, we're starting to semi-formulate some big topic ideas.
Right.
And then let's have some further discussion.
yeah, or they could be like a visual preference survey,
Right.
where they're
Mhm.
like comparing density, you know,
Right.
like, what's the difference between 2 and 3
Mhm.
stories? Like, what does that mean in
Yeah.
terms of different kind of building typologies? And
Okay.
like actually and have the consultants build that all, I mean, we could build that all out, but that's gonna
Mhm.
take time, you know what I mean? And like,
Mhm.
they might already have one that they could like just use, you know? So that's the kind of like thinking about the complementarity of like us working with them, so they're not taking anything necessarily away from us, but we could actually strengthen and reinforce one another's work.
My only
Yeah.
other question was, did we ever get like a space to put documents in, like to like a
We will be
data
able to have
plan?
a page on the website that will be a POCD
Okay.
repository as far as things are concerned. Again, if, the reason why I thought we were going with Google for right now is because everyone can dump it in. Once we have the actual working documents, it's gonna have to be obviously transparent because this is, you know, the POCD. And then it will just go on the town website under the planning commission, under the POCD page. So we will have a little subsection.
Okay. I wasn't sure if I missed something.
No, unfortunately, our IT guy has been out for a little while. He just got back, so it hasn't
Okay.
been set up yet, but he is 100% aware of it and says it's totally doable and we shouldn't have a problem with it, so.
Okay.
Um,
One thing I was thinking about was I was on the ARPA Funds Committee, the American Rescue Plan Act, where we decided, you know, how the town would spend the federal COVID funds that it received, and basically sort of similar to a POCD where it wasn't, you know, our decision on how everything got spent, but it was sort of an advisory committee. And we did several surveys, and I'll have to look back at the meeting minutes because we did a pretty good job with that, and we got some pretty good input from people, so that would be a good thing to tap into.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
definitely. So maybe just to recap, but then also to think about like next steps out of this conversation. So I mean, two immediate things that I think we could get to work on so that we're not wasting any time at all. Is one is we could start to draft out that survey instrument, and if someone like wants to take the lead on that, we could come back to the next meeting and take a look at that. And also beginning like resting on the assumption that the budget will be passed. There will be some kind of budget. One or multiple of us could start to draft out that RFP just so that like if and when we're ready to go, we can just like get that up there and have give people time to respond to it in a way that still works within
I
our
can
time
work
frame.
on the
Yeah.
survey.
I think
Yeah,
the
I'll work
best
on the RFP.
Okay.
I think the best way to go about the survey is to have a spreadsheet in our Google Drive that we've all been looking at, and then
Yeah.
we can put in ideas and questions, and then we can discuss it at the next meeting.
Yeah.
But we can just like if you have a question you want to include or
Okay,
some
yeah,
thoughts, just
yeah.
throw it in the.
Let's do that.
I'll make a spreadsheet, and then we can just and I'll do like a column for each of our names or something on who
Yeah.
would put
I
in
would-
what.
I would suggest that we make it simple so people can respond, like an open-ended in a lot of ways too.
Oh no, this is just so
yeah.
we can like work out the survey. This
Yeah.
isn't like the final survey. This
Okay.
is just for us to
Just
plan out.
brainstorming
Just to
and then we
brainstorm
can
Yeah.
ideas.
Yeah, so then we all have access to it, we can all
Yeah.
look
Yeah.
at it, we can all contribute, it's
Mhm.
not limited to one or two people.
Yeah, I
Um,
think that's a great idea.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So Mark, you'll set
We'll
that
do that
up,
right
and then
now.
Aga, if you wanna,
Let's do that right
Just so
now.
I don't
kind
forget.
of like take the lead on that, but
Sure.
we'll all add to
Yeah.
it. Okay. And then Scott, you said for the RFP, and I would be happy to
Yeah.
help you out
we
with
can
that.
work together.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks
Okay,
everyone. So
Next.
yeah, it's like we have 5 minutes. Well, I guess we could stay here a lot longer than an hour, but I also want to. I want to also be respectful of people's time. I know, Laura, you've probably been here since like 7
Oh,
o'clock
yeah.
in the morning.
Yeah.
Really
I know my kid woke up. My kid woke up at 2:45 in the morning, so
What do you
I've
mean? We
been up
just
for a
got
really
here.
long time. I mean, I do think this is a beneficial process, and we've already been starting to like talk about some of these stakeholders. What we could do, just in the interest of time today, because I feel like we needed to have that conversation, and so it was good, is we could take this offline and do it asynchronously. Like I could just create, I don't know, like
We could use the spreadsheet.
the spreadsheet.
Mark.
Yeah.
We could use the spreadsheet and
Or
just
maybe
throw
you can
our
just-
ideas in there.
Yeah, we can do whatever, I think that's fine, as long as we all have access to it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So if you created some, just kind of like the headings is basically it. The only thing about with the spreadsheet, I'm open to it, but like we're not gonna get to do it now. But like part of it is like you're plotting the different stakeholders here, so as
Yeah.
long as there's a way to,
Is
We
you
that-
know.
can,
is
we
that a
can
meeting?
then plot the information from the spreadsheet onto here.
That sounds like a
Yeah.
meeting.
In our
I was
next
gonna say,
In our
just
next
be a
meeting.
little bit ahead, so you're watching
Yeah,
me like
I
creep a
think
little
that's
bit
a
further
meeting.
this way, like, hi, sorry. Just be careful, because when you're doing a work product and you're creating something and you're creating a document, ideas offline,
that's all.
that's an electronic meeting,
Yeah.
whether, you know.
Even if we're not, like, even if it's asynchronous
We're not
and we're
You
not.
guys
We
Put
could
this
always
all-
call another
You
meeting.
could all put it, you know, and do it yourselves, and when you come back to the next
Yeah.
meeting, or you can have one person composite it in one document at
That's-
the very end.
I think what we could do is, you know how you can have tabs at the bottom of a Google Sheets or an
Right.
Excel spreadsheet? We can like each have our own tab and just work on our own thing, and
Yeah.
it'll be
And then compare it
independent,
and
you know.
kind of
And we
synthesize.
won't discuss anything that the other person does till a meeting, so it would be asynchronous.
Yeah.
Whatever, I mean, I'm, whatever's easiest and
So-
most appropriate,
So
obviously.
the idea, just so that I understand what you're saying, the idea would be that, like, we'd each kind of get one of these, and we could plot it as we
Yeah.
want on a tab, and then we can come back together and
And
talk about
collaborate
it. Yeah,
during a
yeah,
meeting.
yeah, that works.
But we'll do it on the tab
the-
on the POCD survey. So I'll do like Mark, then Courtney, Scott, Aga, and then we'll each have our own thing, and then we can just upload it. You know.
Would you like to add me to that? 'Cause I
And
would
you
love
as well,
to
yeah, of course.
include some
Yes.
stakeholders.
Please,
I have
of
some
course.
names that you
Right.
probably aren't normally aware
Yes,
of.
yes.
I gotta get you access to the
Yes,
drive
I
first.
have to.
I mean, part of it, I think this will work, yeah, to kind of like, you know, brain dump, and then, but it will be important when we meet next time to like kick it off to actually talk and synthesize a little bit, and to have some, you know, like, to get a little bit of context, you know, about why.
Able to get it all printed out too,
Mhm.
big
That'd be
here, so
awesome,
you can all
yeah.
kind of discuss.
So are we gonna do the same thing for the survey, or are we just gonna have one thing for the survey? And we all gonna, or do you want me to do the thing for the survey?
Well, you guys
I'll
will
do
work on the
that thing for
survey
this.
and then
Yeah.
come back to us with the, whatever,
Okay.
yeah, you put
Yeah.
together.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And then, yeah, and then anyone who wants to engage in the stakeholder analysis will have a tab, and they can do that, but, does that make sense?
Okay.
Yeah, and then when we get back together, we'll just, compare notes and talk about that a little bit. I mean, I think that even like this kind of, you know, map could be useful to the consultants as they think about, you know, who they're gonna engage and how, and for us to work together to do something meaningful. So let's, if you'll entertain that, I would say let's do that asynchronously. There was also, you know, we didn't talk about it, but Laura, you sent out some of the other materials like around the participatory planning
Yes.
handbook and stuff, and I don't know that, like, we can't talk about it right now, but I feel like if people worked on that, I would love to bring that back to the next meeting, because like we don't want to lose any of that thinking, and it's like, yeah, we might outsource some of the labor to actually run the show, but there's no reason why we can't tell them like what we think, like we want to see them, you know, come up with, and so the more structure we can provide, the more control we'll exert, I think.
Yeah,
Did you do some thinking?
so I was actually looking at
Yeah.
this participation work. Sorry, it's
Yeah.
all blank. But basically, the information is in the three books that were attached for me to populate all this.
So if mainly just the public participation handbook, it's like the Creighton book.
Oh, okay.
It mirrors this like
great,
almost
okay.
exactly. The other two books are just like source books of ideas, but you could mine those for like
Yeah,
activities, yeah, for
okay.
sure.
I
but the
just
overall
wanna be
structure comes
sure
from the other.
okay.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure I have all my ducks in a row.
Yes. And yeah, I mean, we could spend some time next, you know, meeting, doing this, wrapping this up, and comparing notes there, and that will probably also feed into like the refining the language for the RFP. So I don't know. I guess that's what I would suggest at this moment. And then by then we should maybe know also if the budget's been passed and how much we're working with. Should be happening in May.
You mentioned earlier about
Yeah.
people in the prior POCD.
Yep.
Yeah.
Did you wanna go over that before you adjourn, or you wanna, wait till next time?
I could put them actually in the stakeholders, and
Okay.
I'll like maybe start them,
That would be-
if that makes life
yeah.
easier for everybody, but, cause it's all listed in here rather than listing out people's names and what have you.
Oh, all the old
All
boards
the,
and commissions,
well, I
yeah.
thought that was what you were talking
What-
about, correct me if I'm
Yes.
wrong, these
Yes.
people.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, those
Over
people,
there,
yep. Yeah, so yeah, if we can chart some of those people, and then there may be other, you know, people who aren't there, but who we wanna include. And maybe the only last thing I would say, cause I was gonna make this point if we were gonna do this in person, it's like, when I do this with my students especially, but like also in community, oftentimes people just say like, oh, residents are like a stakeholder group. And I would just encourage us to try to like break that out a little bit, cause it's just so not a monolithic, you know, term. And so for us to think about who might be the different kind of interest groups within our resident population, you know, whether that's like young people or families or
Single family
Senior
versus
citizens.
condos.
senior citizens, exactly.
Okay.
Renters versus homeowners, that kind of thing.
Okay.
Like, you know, people who are dependent on transit. There aren't that many of them, but I see people waiting for the bus in those nice new bus shelters now. So, workers versus, I mean, I don't know how, you know, we would chart them, but like people who work here but don't necessarily live here, I would argue have maybe an interest and a stake in some of these planning, you know, issues, particularly around like Federal Road and our business districts. So, we'll just try to break that all down, because I think that will give us a clearer sense of, you know, how to engage different populations, and then again, we can ask people to respond. I would say in the RFP, I've been asked many times to respond, like, how are you going to do community engagement in this community, and how are you going to like reach all these different interest groups, stakeholders, and they're gonna really have to like make the case for it, right? So, but yeah, no, I feel like we're moving, yeah, we're just chugging along.
I'm also thinking, as far as stakeholders go, what agencies that would have to be involved in it. Like, for example, for public transit, you can talk about HART, or you can
Yep.
talk about, you know, WestCog. I mean, they're not public transit, obviously, they're planning, but they're, you know, they have a lot of great resources, and I think that having them closely involved, or at least getting feedback from them on things, would be
For
really
sure.
good.
Yeah.
You know, we could also look at, you know, just the town agencies, like the Public Works Department, Police Department, Fire Department.
Well, just look at the current plan and just see who it touches.
Yeah, or look at the matrix that we have in the spreadsheet, because one of the things that I added, because I added the column of like who was managing what, and so the plan had this list, so I just literally copied and pasted it in there, so you've got pretty much like almost every committee and board that would be related to the POCD update, so you can just like put each of those on a sticky note, a virtual sticky note, and then we'll put them on actual sticky notes, you know, and place them where you think they kind of like fall, in terms of power and influence, and we'll go from there. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all I got. Stick a fork in me. Thank you for bringing these materials. Sorry we didn't get to use all of them, but we'll
Sorry,
pick
I
back
have
up.
better markers
Yeah.
coming for the next time,
Okay.
so.
Anything else,
And,
Scott, that you can
No, not for me.
Yeah.
Anything else you guys wanna cover?
No.
No? Call it a meeting? Yeah?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I
Yeah.
second.
I think we're all agreeing on that?
Yes.
All right.